Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. I never thought I would reach a point in my marriage where silence felt safer than speaking. Yet here I was, sitting at the edge of the bed in a room that used to feel warm and familiar. The walls had seen our best years, our laughter, and the nights we stayed awake planning a future we were so sure about. But now everything felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. My wife stood in front of me, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to keep her voice steady. She was searching my face like she was trying to find an answer hidden behind my eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard before. "Why don't you want me anymore?" It was a question I knew would come sooner or later, but hearing out loud felt like being stabbed by a memory I had tried so hard to bury. I felt an old ache rise in my chest, the kind that reminded me of all the pain I kept hidden, the wound she pretended not to notice. She waited for me to say something, anything, but I just looked at her, feeling the weight of everything she had thrown away. And for the first time, instead of anger, instead of heartbreak, I felt empty. I managed a small, tired smile. "Because," I said quietly, "you gave away what was mine." Her face froze as the meaning sank in. She knew exactly what I was talking about. There was no need for details. The truth was already sitting heavily between us. She opened her mouth to explain herself again, maybe to repeat the same excuses she had used before, but I lifted my hand slightly to stop her. I didn't want the conversation to turn into a cycle of blame and pity. I was done with circles. She took a shaky breath. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "How long are you going to punish me for it?" I stared at her, not with hatred, but with a strange calmness that had taken me months to reach. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm just finally choosing myself." She flinched as if the words carried more force than I intended, but I didn't take them back. I couldn't. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally admitting that something inside me had changed the day she handed our marriage to someone who didn't deserve it. I still remember the exact moment everything shifted. It was an ordinary Tuesday, nothing special, nothing memorable. I was coming home early from work because I wanted to surprise her with dinner. It had been a difficult month for both of us, and I thought maybe a quiet evening together could help us feel connected again. I picked up her favorite dessert, thinking it would bring a smile to her face. But when I walked into the house, I immediately sensed something was off. The air felt heavier, like the room itself was trying to tell me a secret. Her phone was buzzing on the couch, vibrating nonstop. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just a friend or a work notification. But it didn't stop. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. Buzz after buzz after buzz. Curiosity tugged at me, then concern, then something else. Something I didn't want to name. I picked up the phone. The screen lit up with a message preview. "I miss you. When can I see you again?" I froze. My mind went blank. For a moment, I genuinely thought my eyes were deceiving me. But then another message came, more desperate. "Please don't ignore me like this. Tell me you haven't changed your mind." My heartbeat started pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. I didn't open the messages. I didn't need to. The previews told me enough. And even without reading the full conversations, I felt something inside me tear, quietly, painfully, but completely. That was the day she gave away what belonged to me. Not her body, not her time, not even her loyalty in the traditional sense. It was a trust, the unspoken bond, the security I thought we both cherished. She traded it for someone else's attention, someone else's validation. I didn't tell her I knew. I didn't confront her that night. I sat through dinner, listening to her talk about her day, pretending everything was normal while a storm brewed silently behind my calm expression. I kept the secret for weeks, trying to understand whether this was a one-time weakness or something deeper. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, and hers did in a moment so unexpected that it felt almost scripted by fate. She slipped. She said his name instead of mine. Just once. Just a whisper. Just a small, soft mistake. But it was enough to shatter any hope I had left. She tried to correct herself immediately. her face turning pale, her breath catching in her throat. She tried to laugh it off as exhaustion, as stress, as anything except what it truly was. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stood up and walked out of the room. Before, I said things I could never take back. I slept on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling until morning. In the days that followed, she noticed the distance between us growing. She reached for me, but I didn't move. She talked to me, but I didn't answer the same way. She tried to kiss me, but I turned my head slightly without meaning to. One evening, she finally broke down and confessed everything. She cried for hours, apologizing, begging me to understand, promising that she had ended it and that she still loved me. But love isn't just words, it's actions. And her actions had already written a story I couldn't unsee. I forgave her on the surface because I wanted our marriage to survive. I wanted to believe we could rebuild what she had destroyed. But deep down, the version of me that trusted her blindly no longer existed. That man was gone. Now, standing in the same bedroom where we shared so many memories, she was asking me a question I knew she feared the most. Why don't you want me anymore? I looked at her, noticing the tear tracks on her cheeks, the anxiety in her eyes, the desperate way she clutched her hands like she was holding on to the last pieces of something slipping away. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt in the same sharp way I used to be. I was simply done holding on to something that no longer felt like home. I'm not the man I used to be, I said softly. You changed that, not because you meant to hurt me, but because you did. She reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back before her fingers could reach me. It wasn't intentional, it was instinct, a reflex I developed the day trust died. Can't we fix this? She whispered. Can't we try again? I swallowed hard. I did try, I said. You just didn't notice. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like she might collapse under the weight of those words. I knew part of her believed that once she apologized, everything would go back to normal, that once she cried enough, begged enough, or promised enough, I would eventually soften. But she didn't understand that some mistakes don't scream, they whisper. They quietly drain the foundation of a relationship until there's nothing left to stand on. And now she wanted answers. The truth was simple. I don't want someone who didn't want me when it mattered. Her breath hitched. She covered her mouth, trying to stop another sob from escaping. But it was too late. I watched her crumble, but I didn't move to hold her. I couldn't. The man who used to rush to catch her, whenever she fell, wasn't here anymore. She wiped her tears with shaking hands. So that's it? She asked. You're done. I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room, at the photos on the wall, the memories we built, the life we shared. Everything felt like a museum of a marriage that once was beautiful, but no longer belonged to either of us. Finally, I said, part of me will always care about you, but wanting you, loving you the same way, that part is gone. She sobbed quietly. I never thought I'd lose you. I nodded slightly. Neither did I. And that was the truth. The night she asked me that question, something inside me finally settled. Not healed, not fully understood, but settled, like a storm that spent itself and left only quiet behind. I walked out of the bedroom, leaving her standing there in silence. She didn't follow me. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to say that would change what had already happened. I went to the kitchen and sat at the table, staring at the cup of tea she had prepared earlier. It had gone cold, untouched, much like the way our marriage had turned cold long before either of us admitted it. I held the mug between my hands, feeling the chill, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel the truth without running from it. Some endings don't need dramatic fights or doors slamming. Sometimes they end with quiet acceptance, with two people standing in the same house, but living separate emotional lives. She stayed in the bedroom for a long time, probably crying, probably trying to figure out where everything went wrong. But the real tragedy was that she already knew. She just didn't want to accept that the consequences of her actions had arrived sooner than she expected. Later that night, she came downstairs. Her eyes were swollen, her voice raw, but she tried to gather herself before sitting across from me. The distance between us felt heavier than it ever had before. Can we just talk? She asked softly. I nodded. Talking wasn't the problem. Hearing the truth was. She wiped her cheeks again, her hands trembling slightly. I know you don't trust me anymore, and I know I caused that. But I love you. I never stopped loving you. I looked at her quietly, searching for the right words. I believe you, I said, but loving someone doesn't erase what happened. She shook her head slowly. I thought you forgave me. I forgave you for the act, I replied quietly. But forgiveness doesn't erase the effect. She went silent, and I could see her heart breaking all over again. It wasn't easy for me either. It hurt to see her hurting. But I had learned that caring about someone doesn't mean you have to stay with them, especially when staying feels like stitching together something that will always break open again. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. I can't picture my life without you. I leaned back, exhaling deeply. You didn't think about losing me when you let someone else become part of what we had. Her tears poured freely now, warm and desperate. I was stupid. I was insecure. I felt like you weren't interested in me anymore. Hearing that made something inside me twist. And instead of talking to me, you talked to him? She covered her face with her hands, shaking. It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. But nothing just happens. Not with messages like the ones I saw. Not with someone comforting her at hours she should have been curled against me. Not with someone else learning the parts of her I thought were mine to cherish. I tried, I said quietly. I tried to forget it. I tried to pretend I wasn't hurting. But every time you smiled at me, I wondered if you smiled at him like that. Every time you left the house, I wondered if he was waiting somewhere for you. Every time your phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. She lowered her hands slowly, looking at me through her tears. I ruined everything. Maybe that was the first honest thing she had said in months. But I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. After a long silence, she whispered, "So what now? Are you leaving?" Her fear was real. But the truth was, I didn't want to run from my own home. I didn't want to feel like I was abandoning the life I built just because she handed pieces of it to someone else. No, I said, I'm not leaving the house. But the version of us you're hoping to get back, that's gone. She stared at me like I had just ripped out the last thread holding her together. Are we divorcing? The word hung between us like a ghost. Divorce. Something I never imagined would be part of our story. Yet here we were, staring at the possibility like it had been waiting for us behind every silent argument and every forced smile. I don't know, I admitted honestly. I just know I can't give you what you want right now. She reached across the table slowly, almost fearfully, and placed her hand near mine without touching it. I'll wait, she whispered, as long as it takes. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, couples counseling, whatever you want. Her desperation seeped through every word, but I didn't feel anger. I just felt tired. Tired of being the only one who tried to keep us afloat before everything fell apart. You're asking me to save something you already let drown, I said gently. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if the truth itself hurt more than anything else. I left the table and went to the living room, sitting on the couch in the dim light. She followed me, but she didn't sit too close this time. She was learning the boundaries I never had to set before. We sat together without speaking, the kind of silence that comes after a storm but before the debris is cleared. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to blame. I just wanted peace, something that felt unreachable since the day I found those messages. Eventually, she fell asleep sitting upright, exhausted from crying. I covered her with a blanket, not because we were okay, but because I still cared enough not to let her shiver in the cold. The next morning, she woke up early and made breakfast for both of us. It was her way of trying, of proving she wanted to change. But actions like that felt small now, too small compared to the damage done. She placed a plate in front of me and stood there silently, waiting for some kind of sign. "Thank you," I said, because it was all I could offer. Her eyes filled again, because she knew I used to kiss her on the forehead and pull her into my arms every morning. Now, all she got was 2 simple words. Days passed like that. She tried everything, cooking, cleaning, leaving small notes, touching my arm gently when she passed by, asking if I needed anything. But the more she tried to fix things, the more obvious it became that she was trying to repair something that no longer responded to her touch. I didn't hate her. That would have been easier. What I felt was more complicated. A strange mix of grief, respect for what we once had, and acceptance that it was no longer sustainable. One night, she came to me again, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Do you still love me?" I didn't lie. Not the way I used to. She broke again, her knees buckling as she sank onto the couch beside me. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold the pieces of her heart together. "I don't know how to live without you," she said through quiet sobs. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder, not as her husband, but as someone who still cared enough not to let her drown completely. "You'll learn," I said softly. "And so will I." We spent hours talking, not as a couple desperately trying to fix things, but as two people finally admitting the truth out loud. We spoke about the years we spent together, the good memories, the painful ones, and the mistakes we both made along the way. She apologized again, not with excuses this time, but with honesty. I could hear the regret in her voice, the exhaustion from carrying guilt she didn't know how to put down. But even then, even with her remorse spilling out of her, I knew the wound inside me was too deep to heal within the walls of the same relationship that caused it. Eventually, we both understood something we hadn't been brave enough to admit before. Love doesn't always survive betrayal. Sometimes it gets buried under the weight of it. A week later, I told her we needed space. Real space. I offered to move into the guest room temporarily while we figured out our next steps, but she shook her head and said she would go stay with her sister for a while. She packed her things quietly, stopping every few minutes to wipe away tears. Before she walked out the door, she turned to me one last time. "Will you ever want me again?" she asked, her voice breaking. I breathed slowly, trying to give her an answer that wouldn't destroy her completely, but wouldn't give her false hope either. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but right now, I want peace more than anything." She nodded slowly, even though it shattered her. Then she walked out, closing the door behind her with a soft, final click that echoed through the house like the end of a long, painful chapter. I stood there for a while, staring at the door she had just walked through. It felt strangely quiet, strangely calm. For the first time in months, I wasn't suffocating under the pressure of pretending everything was fine. I still cared for her. I probably always would in some way. But caring doesn't erase the fact that she handed something sacred to someone else. And no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't give it back. Sometimes people break things they can't fix. And sometimes the person who gets hurt learns that letting go is the only way to finally breathe again.